Hi everyone, I'm here with Tony Howard. He is a speaker for United Astrology Conference. Hey Tony.
Hey Nadia, good to be here.
Tony Howard runs astrologyuniversity.com and writes an astrology blog on his website astroraven.com. He co-manages Stephen Forrest's publishing company, Seven Paws Press, and is co-founder of Raven Dream Press, which also publishes astrology titles. So if you are beginner writers in astrology, you find Tony Howard and see if he will take your book on. I understand correctly, right?
Yeah. We're not taking any new authors right at the moment, but because we're full for the next year. But yeah, we publish new authors all the time.
Wonderful. So maybe for the year 2019. Tony has been published in the Mountain Astrologer and is featured in the anthology Astrology, the New Generation. And I'll provide the link underneath. Tony speaks on a very, very interesting topic on Monday, May 28th at 2:30 p.m. Intro to Out of Bounds Planets. This is designed for beginners, correct?
It is, yeah. It's definitely designed for beginners. So it sounds like a complicated topic, but I aim to make it simple for folks to understand and to start using.
It's about Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Those are our very personal planets. What happens when they are out of bound? And can you give us a little preview about your lecture and explain to us what the out of bounds means for these planets?
Sure. So out of bounds is referring to a declination technique. And so to use it, you just have to find the declination grid in your program. So in the lecture, I'll be kind of walking people through that. And that's the most technical part, or that's as technical as my lecture is going to get, because what I try to do in this lecture is to give people a feeling for what that signature adds to the chart or adds to your understanding of the chart. So we start with the idea that if we're analyzing your Mercury, for instance, we're still going to use all the regular techniques that you might use to analyze your Mercury. We're going to look at the sign and the house placement, etc. And you can use any house system or any techniques that you use to analyze your Mercury. Adding on declination to determine if the planet is out of bounds or not. And what that just means is it's referring to the number in declination, and if it's above a certain number, then it's out of bounds. And that's just going to color the way you understand that planet. So it's going to add something like a descriptor. So like if you're a person wearing clothes, then it might add a funny hat to your outfit, right? So it's you're still going to be wearing your whole outfit, but it's just going to add something extra to your understanding of it. And so we'll be talking about that in great detail. I'll be using tons of really fun chart examples. It's a really fun lecture because the folks who have out of bounds planets are very colorful, and there's some really dramatic stories. And so it's a really entertaining lecture as well. It doesn't get bogged down in the technical like a lot of declination lectures do. So it's not dry and boring at all. We're just going to be talking about people's lives and their stories. So it's a really interesting lecture. What you can think of when you're adding declination to your chart interpretation, you're basically adding more dimensions of the sky and of where the planets are, because you're not just using you're using latitude and longitude basically. So you're kind of like, well, I usually demonstrate this visually. Like it's kind of hard to do on the computer, but it's like you just said it well, like above and below the ecliptic. So you can just think of adding up and down to your measurement and not just across is one way to think about it.
Yes, I was just writing in one of my books something about three-dimensional stuff and two-dimensional stuff and four-dimensional stuff. So correct me if I'm wrong. We normally on a regular kind of basis do two-dimensional charts, so it's a two-dimensional reading. You add in another dimension, so it becomes three-dimensional chart, and that third dimension gives us additional detail, additional story, and understanding what the human being life is like.
Yes, and I think that's a great way to say it. I always strive to find more simple ways to describe this for folks, because it is really technical, and you can spend an hour talking about the astronomy of it and trying to get the concept. But I think that's a great metaphor, just thinking of going from 2D to 3D. So you're just adding another layer, another dimension, and really more information that's really there. When you do a reading in 2D, you're really kind of distilling it down to a simpler level, which is great for beginners, because as you know, with astrology, there's so much information to take in, and if you try to take it in all at once, it's just overwhelming. So I always tell people, when you're ready to add on this layer, this is a really simple tool to add on, because to find out if a planet is out of bounds or not is very simple. You're just looking at a number, and it's either in bounds or out of bounds, and then from there you can, use some of the concepts that I'm going to teach in my lecture to add these modifiers to your understanding of that planet. So I also just think whenever I get a chance to talk about declination, a great way of taking in this added layer conceptually is to think about when planets are parallel and conjunct, or if they're just conjunct. So parallel is basically like, if you're using declination, it'd be like a conjunction in declination. And if they're parallel and they're also conjunct, like they would be in the birth chart, if you're just looking at the chart and you have Sun conjunct Mars, for instance, if it's conjunct and parallel, then that's the strongest type of conjunction. And if you can add that simple technique to your understanding, it can really improve your chart interpretation of conjunctions.
So now you're talking really not a beginner language.
Yeah, except that I really do, I've had complete beginners show up to my out of bounds lecture, and after hearing all the chart examples, because I go through a lot of chart examples, so I don't really just stay in theory like we're doing now. People really do get a sense of it, and it really is as simple as looking at this graph of numbers, seeing if the number is there or not, and then boom, you can start using it. So it's actually really simple. It only gets hard if you try to conceptualize the astronomy.
Or if you learn in a new language, because when you're saying parallel and...
Exactly, yeah. Parallel, and then...
Yeah.
And then what makes it parallel, and how big is the orb? Well, of course, that's all complicated. So I try to keep it simple for folks in this lecture.
That sounds good. One other thing I wanted to maybe mention to beginners, to make it easier for them to understand the difference between the regular chart, or the planets that are lined up with the ecliptic, and the planets that go out of bound, is, from my perspective, we have a majority of human beings have their planets within the boundary of declination, within the normal average boundary of declination. Less people out there have planets out of bounds, and that's how societally they appear and behave. We have a majority of people that are sort of your average type people with average type behavior, and then we have people who behave in extraordinary way. Those people usually have these out of bounds planets in their chart. Then the person has hard time fitting in and becomes either outcast or extraordinary human being, something along those lines. Am I correct? Am I on the right track?
That's definitely on the right track. I would just, I'd spend an hour kind of giving people lots of other ways that these things express, but that's definitely one way they can express. And that was really great. I think that would probably be really helpful for people. I think people probably can take that in. I would just add to it that there's another signature that can kind of point to what you were just describing as those kind of extraordinary behaviors, or being outside the box, and that's a strong Uranus aspect. And so when I was doing my research on out of bounds planets, and I would notice that I would start to be able to guess if a certain historical figure or celebrity had an out of bounds planet, and when I was wrong, that person would usually have a strong Uranus aspect. So Uranus conjunct the sun, or square the moon, or configured with the ascendant. So Uranus can sometimes confuse people, and if you do kind of guess wrong, it's usually because that person has a strong Uranus aspect.
Interesting. Those are great reasons to come and see you for beginners, even though it might seem like a new language to learn for them a little bit, but they get to the point of questioning why this particular conjunction of planets in the chart of my loved ones is different from that particular conjunction, the same conjunction in the other person life. Then that's the time to learn about what is it in the declinations, what is it in those three-dimensional situation for these particular people. So that explains and answers questions. Why are they different? Am I correct?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be doing a lecture on parallels probably this year. I wanted to get this out of bounds material out there first, but I'll definitely be talking about those special conjunctions. I like to call them super conjunctions. Some astrologers use that term to mean other things, but I think of a super conjunction as one in which the planets are conjunct in parallel. With out of bounds, I really think that it's very simple to start using, and you don't even have to totally understand how it works. So all you have to be able to do is read the number, notice and find out if that number is out of bounds or not, and then you can just start using it in your chart interpretations right away. So it really is a easy to use, fun new technique that people can learn.
Sounds good. Or if these are complete beginners that they're just starting out to learn about themselves, then it would be interesting for them to explore in their own charts which planets are within the boundary and which planets are out of bound, so they have an answer to their own behavior. This is the best way to learn for beginners, I find, that if they learn through their own chart.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's wonderful, Tony. Thank you so much. It's very, very interesting topic. It's one of the on my 5 to go to on my list to learn a little bit more, because this is an exotic topic to learn in astrology. Not every astrologer uses the declinations.
Yeah.
So, wonderful. So thank you so much.
Of course.
Yes, we'll see you at UAC, and I hope we get people excited about this topic. Don't be scared, you guys. It's a wonderful topic. You learn so much, and certain things will blow your mind when you find certain planets in the out of bound explain certain behaviors of your clients or loved ones. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. It was great chatting with you.
At UAC.